Welcome to Tales, Tunes, and Tomfoolery starring Jerry Springer, along with Gene Galvin and me. I'm Megan Hills. We're recorded live in front of a brilliant studio audience at the Folk School Coffee Parlor in Ludlow, Kentucky.
My daddy came
And now,
home
here he is, Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
Oh, please, thank you. You know, we say a brilliant studio audience, but we don't really know how.
No, we don't.
I mean, they can't be that smart. They're here.
Well,
Okay, so
that
we
true
could be
from a-
brilliant, just bad judgment. No, but actually, we could. What are you holding? Is that lie?
Well,
detector
yeah,
thing?
this is. Do you remember this guy sent me this? It's called the You Lie, and it's a device that is part of a kind of a crowdfunding project. And guys trying to get these out visible and ask us to give a little bit of attention to it. And I have the You Lie.
Tell people how it works. In other words, if someone is lying to you, that's able to detect it and it buzzes?
This is literally a mini polygraph test. I'll give you an example.
But you don't plug it into your...
No, it runs on batteries, and you can set it on various notifications. I have it set on a buzzer. My name is Megan Hills. Let's see, it picked that up right away because her name is Megan Hills. Mine's Gene Galvin. Let me ask you something. Do you work out? Do you work out regularly in your life?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, look.
Now, see, that is BS.
No.
Yeah, do you? Are you at the gym?
Yeah, what gym do you work out in?
I don't know, Jim. Oh, my God. Oh, you mean like sweat?
Yes.
No.
What's the extent
But
of
you're
the
in good
workout
shape.
that you do daily?
Daily? This is true. Back in 1987, I did a knee bend.
Unbelievable.
Well, what happened is I dropped my wallet, and so I had to bend down.
That was it.
My people weren't there.
Gene was off somewhere else.
So I had to pick up my wallet. You talk about my
Sweat.
heart rate went up.
Yeah.
Talk about breaking a sweat.
I was down there in a second, and then to lift it.
Wow.
But no, I don't work out, and I know that's wrong. But I don't like sweating, and the weights are stupid because you pick it up and then you put it right back down. So what's the point?
Yeah, what would the point be? But you know, and you do, have either of you ever taken a lie detector test, literally, formally, a polygraph test?
No.
No, what are you crazy?
You know, I took one.
You took
Did you
one?
really?
I took a polygraph test
Were they
probably
laughing?
5-7 years ago. No.
What did you take it for?
Well,
You were-
here was the deal. So I was talking to this guy who ran this institution, and I've been an educator my whole life, and I've always worked with and have loved working with kids that have a lot of needs, suffice to say.
That's true. That's not joking.
So
Okay.
I found out about this place that was looking for an educator to work with these kids, and these were adjudicated felons. So these were juveniles who had committed felonies. These were some pretty serious situations. So I took an interest in this, and I thought, you know, that's going to be on my bucket list before I'm done to work with that clientele. So I'm talking to these people about this, and I got to the point where they said, look, you know, this may turn into something on our side. You have to decide. And they were very embarrassed to say this and apologetic. And he says, you'd have to take a polygraph test.
Before they would let you work with
Before
the
they would
felons.
hire me.
Yeah,
Before
hire
they
you.
would make the decision. And I said, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And he said, I knew you'd think that. He says, we all had to do it. I had to do it. I really
Do you
apologized.
get to
and
see
I said,
the questions ahead of time?
no. And I said, dude, I will take that
Was it that
test.
you had
I
to go
can
in
tell.
that day?
No, it was going to be about a week later, but I was all over
I can
it.
tell
said,
the
I wanna
truth,
take
but
it.
on questions that I want to tell the truth.
I understand. Well, that's not
I
how
don't
it
want-
works.
Yeah, I don't want to be asked questions where
You don't get a script. You don't get to tell them
No.
what they ask
there's
you.
nothing in the prompter.
Nothing.
No, it's not gonna
And
tell
they
them
don't
nothing.
follow what you want.
No,
There's no
I don't
way
see
you could
what's
do
the
this.
benefit of that.
Well, I couldn't still to this day can't figure out why they were doing this, but they did.
How'd you do?
Well, the deal is, and I really
Is he
want.
working there? Here's the question: Is
I
he working
passed.
there now?
You did. You didn't get close to
I said
passing.
I will take this, and the reason now I don't know that
You
I
don't
cared
have the
about
job, do you?
No.
That's
Well,
not your job. So
end of the day,
obviously
I
you didn't pass the test.
But I said I wanted now to have this experience of taking a polygraph. And it was right out of a black and white movie. The guy gives me a business card, and he says, you call this number. The card said somebody's private detective agency. I go at the appointed time. I get there on the 14th floor of a downtown building, and it's a smoked glass door with the detective agency emblem in it. I knock on the door, no answer. And I'm like, well, I wonder if, I don't know. I just thought this was all going to be a fun experience. And then the guy shows up, walks down the hall, takes me in, sits me down. I don't think I ever looked at him more than a minute because the whole time he's behind you. He straps me up to all this technology.
I'd be terrified.
And I'm thinking, man, this is kind of what I thought it would be and hoped it would be. And I couldn't wait for the questions.
Yeah.
So he says,
did you get any right?
He said, what's your name? And I said, Gene Galvin. He asked how old I was. I told him, are you married?
Okay,
yes.
I know you lied on that.
No, I didn't. And so that's the baseline data. And what they're doing, that little needle behind you has got the baseline, and it's all flat. And then I'm thinking, like, when are the good questions coming?
Yeah.
And the first one I was not ready for. He said,
I'm
have
getting
you
nervous just
ever have you ever stolen from an employer?
Oh, well.
Like a pen? Like
That was the question.
Anything?
Still.
like anything?
Have you stolen
You're
from an
already
employer?
trying to get excuses.
I paused and I said, oh, hell yeah. And he said, and he's behind me, and I wanted to turn around and look, and just put face that way, and he said, well, what'd you steal? And I said, oh, when I was in college, I worked in this shoe store, and I used to steal shoes like all the time. And he's just listening. He's not saying no reaction.
And they didn't hire you?
Oh, I stole
I'm
shoes.
shocked.
And then I said, well, not that many. And then I did something that kind of surprised me. I gave up my brother. I said, now look, my brother Jerry.
So not
my
only are
older
you a
brother
thief,
Jerry,
but you're a rat.
And this is what my brother Jerry used to do, Megan. Because you know my brother Jerry, you know him as well. When he was in college and we worked in this shoe store, he would try to pick up girls when the girls would come into the store to get us. And back in the day, girls would get these satin high heel shoes. Stilettos, and we would dye them to match their dress. They'd bring in like a swath, is that what's called?
For their wedding dress,
And we match it up and do them. So my brother would pick up girls by saying, I'll hook you up with a pair of shoes. So he was stealing shoes all the time for these girls. So I told this guy that. And I said, I'll give you my brother's phone number, his email address. I don't know if there's a statute of limitations. But so I gave up my brother. And then he said, and he's kind of laughing, and he said, look, have you stolen anything lately? This will relate to an endeavor we were all involved in. And I said,
What? I wasn't there.
I was not there either. Excuse me.
I said, yeah, I have. I've stolen from, he says, like in the last, and he gave some number of years. I said, yeah. And he said, what? And I said, well, I used to steal from, and I named the company of the radio station where we did Springer on the Radio a few years back. I said, yeah, I still stole from them. Like what?
What did you steal?
Well, I'm going to tell you. Because see, here's what I decided. If you're going to do a polygraph test, don't lie.
There you go.
And then you pass. So I said, yeah, I would.
You pass, but you're in prison.
No.
Great. You'll be the smartest guy in prison.
I used to get annoyed when I was doing that job, and I'd write stuff, and I was always like grabbing paper and sticking it in my printer at home. And I finally said, I'm just going to grab a ream of paper. So I stole a ream of paper, and he's behind me going, that doesn't really count. And, and he didn't
I bet
say
they
that.
would beg to
He
differ.
didn't say that. Then he asked, this
You'll
offended
never.
me, have I ever committed an act of terrorism against the U.S. government? They asked me that.
And you said what? I'm holding the lie
I want
detector.
my attorney here before I hear my attorney
Does
here.
being friends with Jerry Springer count? Is that an act?
Yeah.
of
No, I have not committed. And then he asked like this creepy question about, molesting kids. And I said that I explained I had never been a priest, so no, I had not. And now, see, that's a cheap joke, isn't it? That's a cheap joke.
That's just...
No. So when it was over, he said, I said, so did I pass? And he said, yes. And I thought, well, I ought to strap that guy up just giving me that answer, because I don't know if that was true or not. And then it turns out I went off and did other stuff and didn't.
No,
Because
they
it was not-
didn't hire
They
you
did
because
not
you were
offer the-
honest, but you're a thief. Who is going to hire him?
You did.
How did he get with this podcast?
I don't know. He's your friend.
Maybe we should have every staff member here. Every
Absolutely not.
talent takes a test, and I thought it was a blast to do, and I'm glad I did it. And,
Actually, I think it would be pretty interesting.
was
I think it would be
interesting.
terribly
It was kind
interesting,
of
but terribly intimidating.
I'm trying to not think, did I ever steal anything?
Let me, speaking of politics, and actually we haven't been speaking of politics.
Not even-
but speaking of politics, Jerry,
Well, you're speaking of thievery.
we're all we're all watching, and this is rolling out over a period of time. The ramp up to the 2016 presidential election,
Yeah.
and there are at least two people on the Democratic side, independent candidate Bernie Sanders, independent senator, right?
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
And former Senator and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton on the Democrat side. And people talk about Elizabeth Warren. She says she won't go in, and who knows. But then there are a lot of people potentially on the Republican side, up to 19, depending on who you count. If you
Sure.
throw in a Donald Trump and some other more, some would say, fringe candidates. How do you see that stack up? Who do you see breaking out? Will the Republicans nominate somebody as slaves of their hard right wing? Will they find a moderate? Well, how do you analyze how that's all playing out, will play out in the next year and a half?
Obviously, I don't know anything more than all the people that study this every day. From a distance, it looks like it's everybody versus Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush will be the establishment candidate. He obviously has the money, the name, and all that. And that doesn't mean he can't be stopped. But the question is, which of the others will stop him? And by the way, any analysis of what's going to happen, you always have to start with a proviso that if there's a headline about something we don't now know, everything changes. So it could change in a day. Somebody could get sick. There could be some new scandal. There could be, so obviously. But as things stand now, it looks like there are an awful lot of Republicans who are not happy with Jeb Bush because he's a Bush. And, because outside of Florida, there would be no one who would dislike. No one's angry at Jeb Bush outside of the state other than they don't want another Clinton Bush run. That seems to be the argument against him. So let me just give a thought about the Jeb Bush case that I haven't seen printed anyplace. And it drives me crazy a little bit because, Gene, I remember we talked about this back in 2004 when we started campaigning and against the war in Iraq. And it's this. Jeb Bush, which I understand, you love your brother. So I give him a little bit of a pass for saying, when asked the question with a camera in your face, what would you have done with the Iraq war? You're going to give a little bit of a pass to your own brother. I mean, I see that almost as a character issue, that, you'll fudge a little bit and say, well, and they all say the same thing, based on what we knew then, maybe. But if I knew then what I know now, and I think that probably includes my brother, obviously it was not the right decision, mistakes were made. That seems to be the politically correct thing to say. In fact, Hillary said, it was a mistake. I made a mistake. We know a lot more now. It shouldn't have been done. Let's move from there. Here's the point I never got. The debate has always been around the issue of, did Saddam Hussein have weapons of mass destruction? And was our intelligence good? And, oh my gosh, we believed the intelligence. Much of the world believed the intelligence. And so, particularly in the aftermath of 9/11, we were a little jumpy, and the intelligence was believed by everybody, so therefore we went in. And we almost give people a pass. Here's why I don't. I was more worried with, what if the administration, I'm not angry that the administration may have lied. I'm angry that, what if the administration was telling the truth? What if the administration really believed that there were weapons of mass destruction? What if our government really thought that this wasn't just a plot to get us into Iraq, but we really thought that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. If Saddam Hussein was telling the truth, and if our government was telling the truth, that it really believed it, that is the dumbest decision of all, to invade Iraq. You don't invade a country that you know has nuclear weapons and you don't know where they are. See, we already knew, we didn't know where they specifically were. That was the whole bit. We had to go in and find them. If a country doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, there's not much of a risk. But if you know they could blow up the Middle East and part of the world, and you don't know where these weapons are to take them out, of course you don't start a war with them. That was the dumbest decision of all. Nobody ever asked Cheney that question. You thought they had these weapons, and you admit we didn't know where they were. So what in the world are you thinking about trying to blow them up? If they really had them, don't you think the first time we invaded, they would then suddenly blow up the Middle East, blow up Israel, blow up American troops? That's the dumbest foreign policy decision certainly made in my lifetime. I mean, at least with the Vietnam War, as wrong as I thought that decision was, there was some basis for it. You know, a theory I didn't abide by, but at least there was people had a justification for what they were doing. It's what they believed. But this was just stupid. So the question isn't, was the administration trying to mislead us? Were they lying? No. The danger is they were telling the truth. And we still went in and started a war. If the Jeb Bush can now say, my brother is my advisor, and by the way, he's already said that the people in George W. Bush's administration are his major advisors now. And when asked specifically the question, who will advise you on the Middle East, he says his brother. That's what's scary, that you will really take advice from someone who thought it was a good idea to start a war with a country that had nuclear weapons and you didn't know where they were. That kind of judgment cannot exist in the White House of our country.
Do you see him, as time passes, as you said earlier, he's the one everybody's chasing then, you think? Can he win? Because remember, you have to differentiate between the primary and the general election. And the primary voters are different from the general election voters. And the primary voters for Republicans are largely older, whiter conservatives. So how do those two things match up? Facing the test of the primary unique voter and then forcing you often, if you're a Republican, over to the far right.
Well, that's what happened to Romney last time. Yeah. And
how do you analyze all of that using the Romney model?
Well, one, I don't think Jeb Bush would fight Evander Holyfield. What was that about? They looked kind of cool in the weigh-in.
He was out of breath after the first lap. It
Oh
was
my
really
God! Then he was just running away, which is stupid.
I thought it was a great, and I'm not kidding, I thought it was great to do. I thought,
Oh, it was a nice thing to do.
As a fundraiser
But then
and-
be in there and go down with a punch or something. Don't just cut running. I mean, what's the point?
did you wrestle a bear once when you were mayor of
I
Cincinnati?
ran.
And didn't you do
No,
the
I
same
didn't
thing?
run. I touched his nose and I got slam dunked.
Fast. It happened so fast.
Knocked me cold. It was on the front page of the Cincinnati Enquirer.
Yeah.
Glasses flying off. Victor the Bear.
Yeah.
That was in the 550 pounds on me.
You're kidding.
At the Cincinnati Coliseum at the time. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Not Coliseum, Convention Center.
Did not know that.
Live television.
New Jerry Springer fact of the day. I had no idea.
Okay, so what was the question? I'm sorry.
Well, so,
Yeah.
will he be...
Oh.
Will he and the bear be forced to the hard right, and then how does he find his way back to the center?
Jeb is betting at this time that no, Jeb will not go as far right as Romney did. And in truth, even though I'm not a Jeb Bush fan, I'm a liberal Democrat. I don't want Jeb Bush to be president. But on the character issue, I think there is some substance to him. There are things he won't say. He's probably the most liberal of the Republicans on immigration, for example. So he's not a crazy. I don't want him to be.
You're a Floridian, and he was your governor.
He's not a crazy person. And so, if I were a Republican, he's a grown-up. He's the one grown-up in the race. The one who is also very consistent, but and doesn't play politics, is the senator from Kentucky,
Rand Paul.
Very
unique candidate, isn't he?
Very unique, and it's not a position I adhere to, but he is who he is, and he's not running away from it, and he's telling Republicans some things they don't want to hear.
But he doesn't really, do you think, have a chance to win that?
No.
I don't either.
No. I think the only two at this point who have a chance against Jeb Bush, and that would be Rubio and Walker from Wisconsin. Unless Rubio strikes gold and, just becomes this real charismatic. But I don't see that. I don't see that. And I think the election will be, do people want Hillary? And I think when I look at the electoral map, barring something we don't know about, there are enough people out there for good reasons that will say it's time. There can be no question about her competence. She may not be as far left as the more liberal wing of the party would like, and some issues I would like to see her. But she's certainly a grown-up. What issue is ever going to get raised that she can't talk about and make some judgment about?
Right.
So, it's probably the most qualified person we've had running for president as a candidate. Whether she turns out to be a great president or even wins the election, who knows? But I think right now, Jeb Bush is the only one who could give her a real race, because people that are unsettled about Hillary won't feel like voting for Jeb, will be voting for a crazy person.
I agree. Hey, one last thing on the primary structure on the Republican side. So they have 19, and that'll winnow down some, I'm sure. But you can't do a debate that doesn't look like a ridiculous clown show with more than maybe 7 or 8. In the past, there have been, both Democrats and Republicans have had 7 or 8 men and women up there, and that was complicated enough. And so you then have to set some thresholds and measurements, and maybe it's done by public policy polling. And the wars are now on of people who are in those fringe areas who are bitter that they might not be included in this array of primary debates, televised debates. And if you're not on those debates, is it not true? You're dead. You get no traction unless you're on. Those are your opportunities to spike.
But it's a Republican
primary. How are they going to do that?
Well, it's a Republican primary, and they can do what they want because it's their party. And they're not going to get trapped as they did last time.
Right.
They recognized they had too many debates, and they looked silly.
And they'll happily then cut out some of those fringe people.
The establishment would love to cut it out.
Okay.
So,
and then that could create another war, internal political war.
But it's not. The truth is, the candidates that are campaigning are not going to. It's not going to result in people in the street saying, "We want to hear from Ben Carson."
Yeah, right.
It's just or from Donald Trump. It's not going to happen. So my guess is that the 5 or 6 that we now think are serious will be the ones in the debate, and that's how they'll handle it.
And is it not true that some people, and maybe particularly on the Republican side, will run for president, it appears, to get enough recognition to get a TV job? Governor Huckabee from Arkansas would be a perfect example. Parlayed a run 12 years ago, and landed a job as an analyst, no, more than an analyst, as a host, a weekend host on Fox News. And so it becomes a business plan to run. And the American electorate sometimes is wise to that strategy and frankly gets resentful of it. But that's a fact.
Well, my plan was to do a show for 30 years.
Yes, a TV show, the Jerry Springer Show.
Yeah. And
which
then-
you're very culturally proud of,
Right.
the
Very proud of.
content of that, and turn that
And
into
really give back to society with that show.
yeah, there.
and parlay
some kind
that into a
presidential run.
Podcast.
presidential run, into a podcast.
Don't you and
It's about the only thing
into
I
a
parlay that
podcast.
into.
Yeah, it's a podcast. Don't you and Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I've heard, have
Speaking
had
of
these
working
secret,
out, there are two
yeah.
similarities.
But you've had secret meetings to try to get the Constitution changed. That
Yeah.
people who were born in foreign countries could
Right.
run for president. You were born
In England.
in a cop car or a cab, or where were you born? In where did I just read?
In a subway station in England.
Were you really?
You didn't know?
Your mom
did-
popped you out in a
second
subway
Jerry Springer
station.
fact of
Oh,
the
really?
day.
That's another one. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was born at the Highgate station in London.
Really?
No
But
kidding.
What was it
wasn't-
like being born? Can you tell us that? I mean,
It was a dark night.
what were your
Big
first
crowd on
impressions? Yeah. Did they all go?
But I had 'em right away.
Jerry. Yeah.
I came out and I say, you know what my wife's favorite wine is?
No, not again. Where's Catfish?
I want
Where's
to
Catfish?
go to my. I can't even say it anymore.
Can't do it anymore. We're gonna cut that out.
Yeah, but it was during the war, and a lot of, it wasn't that rare because those were the bomb shelters. So women in their ninth month would spend the nights at the bomb shelters, at the subway stations. So that wasn't that rare. They
And it is unfair that you couldn't be president. I think that is something that needs to change. And I'm
people
hoping
are
there'll be a
beside
groundswell.
themselves.
I know.
They are beside themselves.
Hey, tonight we have as our musical featured performer and songwriter, Jerry, an old friend of yours and mine,
Yes.
Ellie Fabe. And in fact, her father, God rest his soul, recently passed. George Fabe, you may recall, in the
course.
Ohio politics structure,
Yeah.
was rather important, served as the insurance commissioner a few years back under Governor Richard Celeste, who you ran against, by the way. You ran against
And
Governor
could have
Richard
won,
Celeste.
but you took all our flyers and let them slide down the sewer on election, the day before the election in Cincinnati.
No, it was a Saturday before, and there were some
Okay.
big football games on. I mean, come on.
He had his priorities straight.
My brother Jerry did the ad campaign for Jerry Springer back in that time period. And
82.
I called my brother one day and I said, Jerry Galvin, I said, I really have to compliment you because when you designed the brochures, remember there was a real pretty trifold back then, a magazine size.
It was great.
And I said, I have no idea who decided the paper stock you put it on, but you put it on slick paper. And so what it meant was I could take a box, a cardboard box, and crack open the edge of it and tilt them, and they would slide into the sewer
Very
like
easily.
pigs going to dinner. They would just go zipping right in there. And so when Gene Beaupre would call me and say, how far along are you on your, passing out that letter? I said, dude, it's
Done.
done. I got up early. I took care of it right
and this
away.
is your best friend.
Yeah, well,
This is, yeah. Well, he loved the state more.
yeah.
And the idea of me
No,
being governor in 82.
Hey,
not-
the fact is, we had a blast. In
It was. That was a
race.
great race.
We had a blast, and Richard Celeste won and won the primary, won the general,
and deserved to.
deserved to. He was a good governor,
Yeah.
two-term governor, as I recall, right? Yeah, two-term
Yeah.
governor. And George Fabe, your father, was the insurance commissioner. He's a very well-respected man. Ellie, tell us, please, the song you're going to sing, and then we want to chat with you when you're done.
This is a song called Pandora.
Okay.
And it is on my my most recent album.
Called, what is that?
It's called Devil May Care.
Good. And we're going to talk about that
All right.
when you're done.
Okay. There are secrets that you're keeping, the things you tell no one. They sneak in when you're sleeping, like an outlaw on the run. What you cannot say in the light of day. Sometime deep in conversation, you will understand. Then see me a song from long ago, before we hit 1970. They call me Pandora, some shepherd moons and diamond stars. Not always the best thing for ya, but that's the way some troubles are. There are days living in Ohio you could cash it in. Sometimes that's all you need to know. When you ask me where I've been, what leaves you in the in-between, you know what I mean. They call me Pandora, some shepherd moon and rings and diamond stars. Not always the best thing for ya, but that's the way some troubles are. They call me Pandora, some shepherd rings and diamond stars. Not always the best thing for ya, but that's the way some troubles are. But that's the way, but that's the way some troubles are.
That's great, Ellie. That's Ellie Fabe from Cincinnati, Ohio. And Ellie, by the way, last January was invited, part of a select group, to come to the 30A Songwriters Festival in the Panhandle of Florida. So Seaside, Grayton Beach, that whole area that's up and down 30A, a spectacular place
was
to just go.
spectacular.
And she performed there with a group of songwriters and performed a number of nights, right? So it ran
All
for maybe
3 nights.
three
it
nights.
was a weekend thing, and so I like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and they treated us like royalty.
That's great.
It was really great,
That's great.
considering you don't really get treated like royalty. Like
Often, So the inspiration for that song, Pandora Radio?
No.
No.
Actually, Pandora Radio won't have me, so
Is that right? Because
I don't
of that
really know
song?
why. I'm sure it's a technical glitch. A friend of mine had gotten a new telescope, and he and another guy that I know who is an astrophysicist, they were like quacking on about this and that, and the next thing you know, they got to the moons of Jupiter, and I said, like, hold on, like, I gotta write this down, because
This
it was
is a
like the
song.
talk was so beautiful,
Nice.
you know. So
Nice.
apparently one of the moons is named Pandora.
And you balance your songwriting and performing, because you're pretty active in the greater Cincinnati area. You play a lot of places, because my wife and I have heard you a bunch of times. And you have been doing this for a number of years, because
Yeah.
we've been hearing you for years and we've always loved it. But you're a working artist as well, and a trained artist.
Yeah, that is my background. It is my training, and it's a hard business, the art business. It's all a hard business, whatever.
Yeah.
But I find that the art business was a little harder. Like, and basically, I'm not so good at the business.
At the
you
business
know,
side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you gotta want it pretty bad, and you gotta really work it. And painting, yeah. I love painting, but that people like, well, can you make it a little this or like, no, you know what I mean? It's just even getting yourself, it's just a little sometimes. I won't go on.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a little.
Did they all through your life kind of fit together, or were they pretty compartmentalized?
They're a little compartmentalized.
Okay.
And actually, my dad, like, since we're talking about my dad,
Yeah.
my dad was hilarious, and he was very pragmatic and a great, really important fan of mine. Like, really important. Bought me this guitar when I was 20, long before, like, I really thought that I should be having a guitar that was nice.
Yeah.
And he went to Santa Fe and came back like his hair was on fire. Like, oh my God, the art in Santa Fe, and they're making really big dough for the art in Santa Fe. And so you need to get painting some Indians right away. And I said, no, well, it was really, then they got to be big, really big.
Yeah, be painting some
and
big
I said,
Indians.
well, they're like, I'm painting these little tiny little things, with collage words and scribble and, So it became like this hilarious sort of control thing where when I wouldn't do what he wanted, he would say, just one little Indian. So I did write a song called They Say If You Paint Indians, You Can Make $1 million.
See, there you go. That's good. I like that.
Because he used to say, like, if they want 3-bedroom apartments, you build them 3-bedroom apartments.
Give
He's
them what
really
they want.
tee them off.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Hey, can you help us to take us out on Irene Goodnight?
I would be
And
more than
Jerry
happy to.
Springer's going to jump in on that, too, if you'll let him.
Amen.
Here we go. Boy, and this has been something, Jerry, do you remember way back into our college years when we were
Yes.
playing folk music? Tuning was always going on.
Yes, but I thought it was always overvalued.
Overvalued, yeah. And digital tuners are of great
Yeah.
help now. And I see that Ellie has a digital tuner at the end of her.
Yeah. I swore. I played at the bitter end one night, and the
Bitter End in
green
New
room
York?
was so
Oh,
cold that it
Greenwich
didn't go
Village.
well, and I swore I would never go on stage without a tuner again.
That's good.
You've been listening to Tales, Tunes, and Tomfoolery, sponsored by the Folk School Coffee Parlor in Ludlow, Kentucky. Thanks to Patrick Kennedy for writing our opening song, and to you for listening. Hope to see y'all again real soon.
We'll see you in my dreams. Last Saturday night, I got married. Me and my wife settled down. Now me and my wife have parted. I think I'll take a little stroll downtown. Irene, good night, Irene. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. I'll see you in my dreams.
Sometimes I live in the country. Sometimes I live in town. Sometimes I take a great notion to jump in the river and drown.